everyone. Good Tuesday evening to you. I'm Dave Bacon along with Bud Shaw from WKYC.com. It's more sports and Les Levine. Les Levine has the evening off. It is day 2 of legalized tampering. Doesn't that sound fun? In the NFL, it's the time when teams can negotiate with free agents and get them to agree to deals before free agency begins with the new league year at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. The Browns are busy. And we will get to some thoughts on that with Bud Shaw first, but some housekeeping. So the Browns go out and sign a defensive lineman as they agree to terms with Sheldon Richardson. 28 years old, 6 years in the NFL. They agree to a 3-year deal with $39 million. You see the guaranteed money there. He's a defensive tackle that is very good and has been productive in the NFL. In addition to Richardson, the Browns traded for Olivier Vernon. They gave up Kevin Zeitler to acquire him from the Giants, 28 years old, 7 years in the NFL, has made the Pro Bowl before, a guy that rushes from the edge. And late this afternoon, the Browns brought back Rashad Perriman, a 1-year, $4 million deal for a guy who was given up for dead, basically, and had a pretty good year for the Browns when given the opportunity last year. Bud Shaw, the thoughts. Put this in perspective as far as free agency goes.
I'll tell you
for that.
One thing real quick. The Perryman signing is good for them, I think. And what strikes me about it is that those numbers, the 16 catches, 340 yards, it felt like he did more. And I think it was because we saw him kind of develop as the season went on. So I think they're expecting bigger things out of him.
Remember, former first-round pick.
Yeah.
So the talent was there. The production didn't match it, really, until he, got into the offense with Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah, and I liked the Richardson acquisition. I think he's a guy that fits the bill for what John Dorsey said at the scouting combine, which was to get longer and more active in that interior line, and I think he did that for him.
We'll put it in perspective. The opening commentary, let us have it.
Well, John Dorsey told us he would not spend like a drunken sailor in free agency. The definition of that term, we now know, is the money the Jets threw at linebacker C.J. Mosley to entice him to leave Baltimore. Dorsey instead signed former Vikings defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson, who is just 28 and answers a big need at run defense and also pressuring the passer. Dorsey used guard Kevin Zeitler to acquire Olivier Vernon from the Giants to rush from the edge. I know, that could have been Bradley Chubb. You and I have talked about this in last year's draft, but clearly Dorsey thought speed at corner was a bigger need. The Browns have significantly improved a defense that needed significant improvement despite all the acclaim last year about forcing turnovers. Dorsey's moves in the draft and free agency complement each other. Maybe that happens when you have so many picks and so much money to spend, but the last 20 years suggests one of the biggest acquisitions in Berea was John Dorsey himself.
Yeah, it's tough to argue with that. Now the trick is if you're John Dorsey, Browns fans want to see another draft like last year and go out and get some more impact players like you
and
did.
Odell Beckham by this time tomorrow. And then I think they'll start building the statue to Dorsey.
Other than that, all is good though.
Yeah, listen, I have thrown a little cold water on that Beckham idea, only because I need to know what it's going to cost. And I think that's a fair reasoning. I've heard people today say, so if you give him a 17 this year and you give him a number 1 next year, well, that's number 1's going to be in the 20s because the Browns are certainly going to be an improved team. And if you've spent any time in this town, that's like an invitation for an injury at quarterback in the second week, and they go 5-11, and it's the number 7 pick in the draft that they've given up. And Odell Beckham is an amazing talent, but he also brings some other issues into the locker room. And if the Browns do proceed with this deal or making an offer and come away with him, I think it's going to speak, Dave, to the fact that they think Baker Mayfield, personality-wise, can handle almost anything.
Yeah, and don't forget, Jarvis Landry would be another guy. He went to college with him.
Sure.
That's one of his very good friends. So they probably feel that would mute it. You mentioned it. The Browns have upgraded a defense significantly that significantly needed to be upgraded. Let's take a look. Defensive line. This is how it looks right now. That looks pretty good. They got some guys that can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, now we don't know whether Agba is going to be part of the 2019 Browns. Bringing in Olivier Vernon probably tells the Browns that they could move him in the right deal if they felt that they needed to bring in a big-time player.
Let's look at the linebacking core, and this one needs a little work. Kirksey, if he's healthy, is pretty good. Schobert, pretty good, but you really want that guy in the middle that's big and stuffs the run, and that's I agree with you. I don't think you want to pay him $18 million a year to stuff the run, but
yeah, Mosley would have stepped in, I think, as their best linebacker, clearly, and that's not to take anything away from Schobert and Kirksey. They're both good players, but that would have been a big signing. I think Dorsey is trying to keep in mind that within the next few years now, he's going to have a lot of guys that he wants to re-sign if he drafts well, which he's shown he can do.
Defensive backfield, again, pretty good. You might want to add a veteran kind of corner that can show the ropes to Denzel Ward, so to speak.
Yeah, and the other interesting one there, I think, is Demarius Randall, who has watched the price of safeties should go through the roof in this free agent season. He's got 1 year left at $9 million next year. The Browns, I think, would like to get him under a longer-term deal. Does he roll the dice, play for his $9 million, and then hit the free agent market next year when he might be the best safety out there?
Well, the other one that's interesting there is Jabril Peppers, because Steve Wilks is a little different defensive coordinator. Do they try to play? Remember, Jabril Peppers played linebacker at Michigan and was an all Big Ten linebacker. Do you kind of play him in the box and have him move around some? That's a question to be asked of Steve Wilks. And let's look at the wide receivers. Again, not a bad group, but boy, wouldn't you like to have somebody that opens up the underneath stuff for Jarvis Landry? And I'm not sold on Callaway. You and I have gone back and forth on that. I think he has potential. I don't think he's quite there yet.
Yeah, the Jarvis Landry thing is interesting to me because they did pay him, they did pay him almost like a number one receiver last year. I don't think he's a number one receiver. I think that's why they feel like they could really make themselves a dynamic offense if they could bring in somebody like Beckham.
Well, he is probably one of the best underneath receivers who can turn that into big plays. But yeah, if a defense is focusing on Jarvis Landry, it's going to be tough for him to sled. And here is what we're talking about. Odell Beckham, 26 years old, 5th year in the NFL, 3 Pro Bowls. You know the numbers. He's missed 16 games the last 2 years because of injuries. When there's consistent talk about it on a national level as far as Odell Beckham possibly being traded, there's something to that because those national guys have guys in those teams.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the fact that the Giants are listening maybe suggests that they have already regretting the size of the deal that they gave him, and they have to be a little bit leery of how this season might turn out in New York, and if it goes south. Is he going to look at Antonio Brown and see how Antonio Brown, complained his way to a $30 million guaranteed contract? That wouldn't be obviously the goal in Beckham's case because he's already got a lot of money coming. But he might decide that getting out is the best thing for him, and then his value may not be what it is right now.
That whole Antonio Brown deal sets a horrible, horrible precedent because he basically got everything that he wanted. He dictated that he was going to get more money out of Pittsburgh, and how do you do it? By not playing Week 16 of the regular season.
And I know some people are using this to say, oh, how bad of a GM is Kevin Colbert? Well, he was put in a bad spot in this particular case, and you could blame Mike Tomlin more for it by not, nipping this in the bud as the season was going on. I did disagree when Colbert came out and said, Ben Roethlisberger should be able.
Yeah, 25 children.
Yeah,
or 45 children.
There are 52 children on the roster, and he ought to be able to. They ought to listen to him. That's not the way NFL locker rooms work.
No, and you don't need to do that.
No.
I mean, not only did you put the other guys in a bad situation, you also put Roethlisberger in a bad situation with his teammates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps even more so. You see the number if you want to get involved, 216-575-0403. Both Sean and I are going to take a quick time out. Later in the show, Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report will join us. You also can head to Facebook. Facebook.com/More Sports Less Levine. New content posted each and every day, including our Facebook question of the day. We'll get into that later. Right now, Bud Shaw and I are going to take a quick timeout. More sports and less Levine. We'll be right back after this timeout.
The heart-pounding, fast-breaking action of college basketball is back when the 2019 Mid-American Conference Basketball Tournament returns to the Q March 13th through the 16th, presented by Visit Myrtle Beach. Pulses will rise and hearts will race as the men and women of the MAC put it all on the line. Tickets for the MAC tournament are on sale now at the Q box office, online at theqarena.com, and at all Northern Ohio discount drug marts. MAC Tournament Basketball. Be there.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
It's the best of the best, Cleveland. All-star cars, hot rods, and motorcycles at the 2019 Summit Racing Equipment IX Piston-Powered Autorama. March 15th, 16th, and 17th at the IX Center. If a piston makes it go, it's in this all-star show, featuring motorcycles, antique trucks, insane hot rods in the Asylum, tractors, military vehicles, along with all-star themed car clubs on display. New this year is Fat Man's Invasion with Euro imports, sport compacts, lowriders, and more. PistonPowerShow.com for details. Kids 12 and under are free. Discount tickets on sale now at select Discount Drug Mart locations and Summit Racing Equipment in Talmadge.
Welcome back to more sports and less Levine. You see the number if you want to get involved, along with Bud Shaw from WKYC.com. I'm Dave Bacon. Bud, the price of free agency has gone up. The deals just keep getting more and more
Yeah, I think
expensive.
we do. We say that every year, but in this case, what's happened with safeties, a position that, it's a valuable position, but it's not one that people have built defenses around a lot in this day and age. So it's interesting to me that some of those numbers are out there, and certainly the numbers for Mosley are, wow, off the chart.
Yeah,
almost $80 million.
Safeties,
not all of it guaranteed, obviously.
Right,
but.
safeties and linebackers. And here is some of the signings from the second day of legal tampering, and actually their agreements. Signings come tomorrow at 4 o'clock when the league year begins. So the Vikings agreed to terms with their linebacker after he had agreed to terms with the Jets, and then the Vikings threw some incentives on top of it, so he goes back to the Vikings, does Anthony Barr, a guy that the Browns were said to have a little bit of interest. Again, pretty good deal, and he can make even more than that with incentives. You alluded to this one. The Jets threw 5 years, $85 million at C.J. Mosley, an interior linebacker. Can you imagine if the Jets would have signed
both
Mosley?
of those
Yeah,
guys.
both of those guys. That's
While they're still talking to Le'Veon Bell.
yeah. The Packers have been busy. Zadarius Smith, 4 years, $66 million. Preston Smith, 4 years, $52 million. Adrian Amos, 4 years, $37 million. Do you think they're trying to put some defense on the opposite side of the ball of Aaron Rodgers there? Then another one is the Cardinals has signed Jordan Hicks, and that's a guy that I know Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report really hoped the Browns would look at seriously, and Jake will be joining us in a little bit. We'll talk to him about that. The Bills signed John Brown, and again, that just and they also signed Cole Beasley, but $9 million and $7.5 million for guys that are okay, but John Brown did really well with Joe Flacco last year when they switched to Lamar Jackson. He kind of disappeared from the radar screen. And then Bradley Roby, who the Browns were said to be interested in, probably not interested in him at $10 million a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
And again, here are the top remaining free agents, according to NFL.com. Le'Veon Bell, allegedly the Colts are no longer interested in him. Down to the Jets and the Ravens. Some say it's the Jets and the Jets, so we'll see how that goes. Haven't heard much about Earl Thomas, who probably is turning cartwheels at the price of safeties these days. Justin Houston, that's a guy to keep an eye on, has some history with John Dorsey. Sue and those guys probably a little too expensive for what the Browns are looking at. Darby's kind of interesting. It'll be interesting. Jared Cook, not really the profile of what the Browns are looking for from a tight end.
Yeah, I think they really feel the need, whether they do it in the draft or they do it in free agency, is to get another corner on this team. Denzel Ward had a fantastic year, right?
Yep.
But we all know that he's undersized, and those concussions are certainly a big concern. I don't know that it's a medical issue at this point that the organization has been told, we don't know about his future. I doubt that, but it's still reason to want more talent back there in case you lose him again for some length of time.
Right, and the other thing is, Wilkes is a defensive back coach, so it's going to be very interesting to see how Denzel Ward develops. That's where Steve Wilkes made his stock and trade, was among the best. That's what earned him the head coaching job with the Cardinals last year.
We'll see soon enough if he agrees with Greg Williams' take that Denzel Ward needs to learn how to tackle differently. Because Williams said it more than once after those kinds of collisions.
You kind of alluded to this. John Dorsey has a price in mind, as most good GMs and teams do. It appears he has stuck to the plan that he had going in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the knocks on him in Kansas City was that he didn't do a great job managing the cap. He didn't communicate real well in the front office. I think he has fixed that latter one by bringing in guys that he knows he's worked with before, who know him a little bit better. The other part of this is that he has a lot of money, but everyone thinks that he ought to be able to go out and just spend it, right? Well, before long, if this team is good, you're going to have to figure on getting Myles Garrett signed for the long term. Do you want Jabril Peppers signed long term? Do you want, Mayfield and Ward or guys that are only going into their second year? There's time for that, I know, but there's other guys that if you have a good organization, you have to use that cap money to keep your own, and we've seen in past years when this organization has decided, like with Mitchell Schwartz and some other guys, that they didn't really need to keep their own. Alex Mack, players like that. So I think Dorsey is smart enough to know that he can't go crazy right now and just bring in a bunch of 30-year-old guys to try to fill in positions,
Are you concerned at all with the trade of Zeitler? I mean, people are mentioning Corbett. Corbett doesn't have to be, Zeitler. He's got to be good. He's got to be, 80% of Kevin Zeitler.
Yeah, I thought it was one of those deals that you kind of flipped the coin and thought both sides won something here in this deal, and both sides lost a little something in the deal. If they're able to redo Vernon's contract and allows them to keep him for more than 1 year, then I feel a little bit better about it. Right now the way it's structured, I think a lot of people were suggesting that they would keep him this year, and then next year they don't want to carry, what does he do, another $15 million next year. So if they're smart about it and he wants to be here, I think it could be a good deal. And you're just betting that Corbett can fill in there pretty well, as you say, and they can use the draft to add depth at that position, and maybe even at tackle through the draft.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is, Greg Robinson, did he really figure it out here? Because this guy was picked number 2 overall, and it was multiple times. So, again, you have to trust. What a concept. Trust the decision makers for your football team.
Yeah, and I like the fact that both Robinson and Perryman, it may be because they didn't know they knew that their market wasn't great for them after only these one successful seasons. But I think they're both on those kind of like show us kind of contracts. 1 year for $9 million, I think it is for Greg Robinson, or $8 million.
I think it's 9.
And then Perryman for $4. If they're the players that they hinted at last year, they have a chance of becoming very well compensated and staying here for when this team gets really good.
The other thing John Dorsey said at the Combine, that he didn't view him as being one player away or having the ability to go for it, this year, just trying to improve. I think he was being very honest with the moves that he's made.
Yeah, I thought so too. And at WKYC we do a podcast, and I do it with Ben Axelrod, and he thought oh, he's laying in the weeds. He's really going to do something big here. And we may find out that he does something big with the Beckham deal. And if he gives up 2 number ones in that deal, I'll feel like that may be the definition of trying to go for it, because they're, after 1-7-8 in one season, you don't usually think of a team as, on the precipice of a Super Bowl and willing to give up draft capital to bring in players. If he does that, he'll have a hard time defending his not going to go for it edict that he gave us at the Combine. But I thought he was being honest about it. I thought he's been kind of judicious in the moves he's made so far this year and in this free agent season, and I think they've been smart ones.
Yeah, the other thing is I had a chance to talk to some national people, and they didn't think the Browns were going to be terribly active in free agency, not because they weren't good, but because they had young talent that if you bring in a free agent, you don't really know what you have at that point. And that was the point that they were making when I was asking them how good they thought the Browns were going to be.
Yeah, I think last year we saw with Dorsey that he sat in that locker room the last 5 games of the 2017 season, and he just sat. He'd pull up a chair after the game and he would just sit there, and watch. And I think what he saw was a team that was so young and so, I don't want to say leaderless, but lacking in that category. And that's why I think you saw him so active last year at this point, where he was bringing in a bunch of guys. I don't know how many trades and acquisitions he made at this point last year, but far more than he's made so far this time. And I think it was his way of bringing a veteran influence to this team with guys that could still play, obviously. So I didn't expect him to do the same kind of thing this year, because they have drafted well and they've got good young players who still need playing time to blossom.
Well, we're going to take a quick time out. You see the number if you want to get involved, 216-575-0403. Bud Shaw from WKYC.com, here on cleveland.com with more sports and less Levine. Well, Northfield Park is your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch the excitement of live harness racing Monday through Wednesday and Saturday evenings with the 6 p.m. post time. We're open early every day for simulcast action from the top thoroughbred and harness tracks around the world. Enjoy free handicapping contests all weekend long, including the popular Road to the Derby contest on Saturdays and weekly Sunday contests featuring Gulfstream Park. Free admission and parking every day at Northfield Park. We'll take a quick time out, but Shaw and I will return. It's more sports and less Levine here on cleveland.com.
Your basement is damp, dirty, and not somewhere you want to spend time. Let Naturestone Flooring transform your basement into a true extension of your home. Naturestone's proprietary hydrostatic ports allow water to simply evaporate, so no mold or mildew. Naturestone is the affordable basement floor solution that beautifies your home.
Get Naturestone installed in your home by the end of March and get up to 50% off. Schedule your free in-home estimate easily online today.
It's not just a floor. Wow, it's Naturestone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to more sports and less Levine. I'm Dave Bacon, filling in for Les Levine, joined by Bud Shaw from WKYC.com. Time to take a look at our Facebook question of the day. What are your thoughts about what the Browns have done so far in free agency? Glenn, I like what the Browns have done so far, building up the defense that needs a lot of help. More player movement could happen fast this offseason. I have complete trust in Dorsey, unlike the previous front office regimes. Carl, everyone signed so far will make us better on defense, faster than the draft will. I like the moves very much. Andy Mees, Dorsey's loading up on the defensive front with pass rushers to help Myles Garrett get to the quarterback. Also, Sheldon Richardson will provide versatility. He can play either tackle or end. Depending on injuries, Richardson is as good a pass rusher who can also stop the run. And Dennis, so far so good. Would love to see a wide receiver and a cornerback. I'm guessing that's coming in the draft. Obviously, that was before Perriman was brought back.
Yeah. I don't think the Perriman signing would change their approach if they saw a receiver they liked in the draft. I also don't think it would change their approach in at least making an offer and seeing what the Giants are willing to take with Beckham.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were talking, there's some reports that it would be a 1 this year, a 2 next year, and potentially Emmanuel Ogbah to the Giants to get Beckham.
Well, you said that you didn't think the cap money would, and maybe Jake will be able to shed some light on this, but I thought that the Giants would be committing themselves to carrying $35 million in dead cap money.
I don't think it's $35 million. I think it's significantly less. It's less than the hit they took for than the Steelers took for Antonio Brown.
I
believe it is
because
less.
I thought the hit the Steelers took for Antonio Brown was somewhere around 20.
Yeah, I think
21. I thought this was more.
I think it's less. I think it's like 16 or 18. I'm not certain of that. But the thought is they don't have their young quarterback yet. You would take the dead cap money, and then you've got, you know, the picks, and you go and you get potentially Haskins or Kyler Murray, and then you build that way. But again, that's.
In Eli Manning's last year, would you really like to take Odell Beckham away from him? That seems like a pretty dangerous strategy in my part. But they, like I said, they may regret that contract already, and certainly there are reasons to. It's just a lot of money. It's a lot of money for the Browns to have tied up at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
But you know, you forget a guy like this that you think is a generational talent. I thought the thing you pointed out, Dave, which a lot of people have just completely dismissed. They don't even discuss it. He's missed 16 games over the last 2 seasons. That's
concerning.
That's a considerable amount of games.
And it's the NFL. Those wide receivers and running backs take a beating along with the quarterback, and they're not the biggest guys. So the continual beating has a cumulative effect on guys that run fast.
I mean, you don't have to worry about the kicking net accepting a marriage proposal from Beckham and then they go away on a honeymoon for a week. But he won't leave them high and dry, I don't think, like Antonio Brown left the Steelers in that final game. But I do think that there are some. He doesn't worry me from a chemistry standpoint the way bringing in Brown would right now, because Brown, I think, has acted, you know, in ways that are unbecoming to an NFL locker room. I think he didn't do exactly what Le'Veon Bell did, but certainly he could have played in the final game and chose not to. And how do you look your teammates in the eye after that? I don't think Beckham is that kind of a problem, but he's certainly a guy who, if the ball isn't coming to him in the quantities that he wants, you know, he's got a little bit of that TO to him, I think.
And you know, Brown is the thing Brown did. If things don't go well where he is now, everybody's going to be thinking, is this guy going to go and, you know, not show up on, you know, those are the type of things that stay with a player.
They sure do. And I know people, I'm all for players getting paid because I think it's a brutal sport that takes more than its pound of flesh. And when these guys are performing well, I think they deserve, especially in a sport that doesn't guarantee contracts as much as baseball. I like to see these guys get paid. I just didn't like the way he went about doing it.
No, I agree. He basically held his breath until he got what he wanted.
Yeah.
We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. You see the number if you want to get involved, 216-575-0403. Well, it is the best of the best Cleveland All-Star vehicles at the 2019 Summit Racing Equipment iX piston-powered Autorama, March 15th, 16th, and 17th at the iX Center. All weekend long, You won't want to miss motorcycles, antique trucks, insane hot rods in the asylum, tractors, military vehicles, along with all-star theme car clubs on display. New this year, Fat Man's Invasion with Euro imports, sports compacts, lowriders, and more. If a piston makes it go, it's in the show. The show rolls into the IX Center. Kids 12 and under are free. Discounted tickets on sale now at select Discount Drug Mart locations and Summit Racing Equipment in Talmadge. Military and first responder discounts available at the IX Center box office. Bud Shaw and I will be back with more on More Sports and less Levine after this timeout here on cleveland.com.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
It takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling to bring the heat when things get chilly. Find us at 440-449-HEAT.
Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine. I'm Dave Bacon, filling in for Les Levine, joined by Bud Shaw from WKYC.com. Let's bring in Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report, friend of the show, a contributor. Jake, what do you make of what the Browns have done so far in this legalized tampering, the beginning of free agency, if you will?
Yeah, I think they've done some really interesting things, especially, with Sheldon Richardson. I thought it was the right kind of deal, I think, for their situation, especially getting a player opposite, Larry Ogunjobi, who can take the burden off of him. But you feel pretty good, too, about how it looks like that contract structured. It might be here in the front of that cap-loaded structure set up, and that could help the Browns when they go to sign their players a little bit later. So you feel good about that $21 million instead of the $34-ish million. So the Browns can take advantage of that late, maybe 2-year out in that contract. But Sheldon is a very good football player, very quick twitch, really good playing at pad level, really good getting after the quarterback to play the run too. Was the right fit that was on the market that made sense next to Larry Ogunjobi. Obviously, bringing back Rashad Perriman is important for them, playing the X position, which is a vital position for the Browns in that offense. $4 million, very fair deal for them too. Do you feel good about that number as well?
Are you impressed with the way they have not gone crazy and overspent? There's some eye-opening contracts that are being reported out there. Do you think they've kind of maintained what they wanted to do, their plan, if you will?
Yeah, it seems like it. It does seem like that. I think people get a little bit confused with how much money they actually have. The rollover cap is from years past. That gives them an opportunity for the next calendar year to take advantage of an inflated budget, but it doesn't go year to year to year. So those players, maybe like C.J. Mosley, Anthony Barr, some of those big name players that we've seen come off the market, maybe are guys that they don't feel like they can afford going into the future, as they want to keep a lot of the guys that they have, which is understandable for a team that is looking at building a longest window as possible. So, I would give them an applause for showing some restraint in the free agency market, especially with the likes of maybe Tyrell Williams, who's out there still as well. Some of those wide receivers who we've seen go off the off the market is pretty good job by them so far. I do think it's setting up for, I know everybody's talking about in Cleveland the opportunity to bring in a big name wide receiver from the East Coast.
Jake, did you expect the market to be better for Perriman? Or are you surprised that he got the deal that he got and didn't leave town?
Great question. I think that we all presume that he's going to have a little bit more of an opportunity out there, but the wide receiver market's been a little bit strange. The numbers have looked interesting for some guys like Cole Beasley, John Brown, but it hasn't been necessarily a big guaranteed money situation, and it hasn't been spread out over multiple years. I think most teams are, valuing the wide receivers on this market as guys who can just maybe don't have the guarantee over the long term. They don't, maybe we don't know how long they're going to perform at the level that they're performing, but we do feel like they might be able to contribute immediately. The name that everybody was most interested in is Tyrell Williams, and the fact that he is now into day 3. If he doesn't get signed tonight, day 3 of free agency without a contract in the 11, 12 million a year range he was looking for, tells you where most teams are valuing these free agents. So I would imagine Perriman went into free agency with the idea he could get multiple years, maybe close to 12 million on the total number, but it hasn't panned out. And the Browns did a nice job in being patient, showing him that market over the first day, and then saying, hey, man, we're still here. We still want you to come back on a prove-it deal. And it made sense for everybody involved.
In your estimation, should the Sheldon Richardson acquisition change what the Browns do with either number 17 or their second-round pick?
I don't think so, Bud. I think that they make that signing so that they don't have to go into the draft with the idea of we need this guy because of position. And that's a really nice luxury to have, because instead of going into pick 17 and saying, do we decide between Christian Wilkins and do we decide between maybe Jeffrey Simmons coming off this ACL tear, they don't have to do that now. They can look at what's the best player available that can help us, whether it's a corner, whether it's a linebacker, or whether it's an offensive tackle. That's somebody that they can take and feel comfortable about that.
Yeah, and in that same vein, how about the Zeitler trade? Would you expect that means they're going to go offensive line early in this draft?
I would expect them to at least entertain the idea of a veteran interior offensive guard center type to challenge them, not just because of the Zeitler situation, but because J.C. Treader comes up in another year. They might be looking to bring some guys in who they can kind of project over the long haul. But I do certainly think that in the middle rounds, round 2, 3, 4, that they will look for an interior player, somebody that can provide some insurance to not only Treader, but can come in right away. And if he can plays well enough, he can compete with, Corbett at right guard to take that position.
Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report joining Bud and I. Jake, all right, let's cut to the chase. What are you hearing about Odell Beckham Jr.? And you keep hearing the national people who have the people inside organizations talking about it. That must mean there's at least a little bit of legs to that.
Yeah, it seemed like last week it started to gather some buzz from some folks sort of behind the scenes, maybe people that aren't as well known on a national level. But you have people who write for, the New Jersey-based newspapers. You obviously have Chris Mortensen confirm Josina Anderson's report about the Browns booking around. Here's what I know. I feel very confident in saying that the Browns have at least engaged New York with entertaining offers, that if New York is serious about moving on from him, they have the opportunity to do so. The Browns have put the ball in New York's court. They presented them with probably what is the best option for a trade, because there's not many teams on the market that would be in that shape to offer up a ton of draft capital and also still have the salary cap to absorb that situation. The Browns are one of the few who have that ability, because if you say, look at San Francisco, another team that's been linked, they have the number 2 pick. I don't think they want to move the number 2 pick for Odell Beckham. The Browns, on the other hand, have 17, and they can look to say, hey, we can give you something now, we can give you something later, and we can afford this guy for the foreseeable future, so it makes sense for us, and we can maybe provide you with some defensive depth on the side of the ball that you guys are struggling to maybe replace some guys, as free agency has been pretty devastating to them in some positions too. So it does make sense. I'm not here to say that this is going to happen. I think everybody's trying to handle this with caution, but I feel very confident saying that John Dorsey and the Browns are actively pursuing him. Does that mean a deal gets made? No, nobody really knows, but it does make sense on the Browns end for sure. Now the Giants have to decide, does this make sense for us? Because if we're keeping Eli Manning here for another year, which is what the rumor is, they're very committed to doing, how does it make much sense to let Odell Beckham, his best receiver, go in that situation? So they got to really decide, are they into this or are they tanking?
Yeah, Jake, you may have heard us talking about it leading into your spot, but if they would trade him, what is the cap implications for New York if they trade Beckham?
I'm just an English major, so I'm not great at the cap. I will say that I have heard is it's something closer to 16. Now, I know there's a date involved in this where it can become more impact for the cap after June 1st. But if it's before June 1st, I think that they can cut it to a certain level, and there might be the potential to spread it out. But again, I'm not the capologist. I'm just kind of hearing and reading and saying what everybody else is saying. But it does feel to me like the things that I've heard from people that I trust on that matter is that making a deal before June 1st still makes a lot of sense for both teams involved.
Well, I just want you to know that among the three of us, you are the cap expert.
Exactly. We have ordained you the capologist.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report. Who are some of the guys that the Browns may be looking at still in free agency as it continues on?
Yeah, they have to look linebacker still. I think KJ Wright out of Seattle is an interesting name still out there. Doesn't seem like Seattle's going to be able to bring him back. He's a target that I think that they might pursue. We'll see. I think still at the defensive line position, Henry Anderson, who used to play for the Jets, really good defensive tackle, was in a 3-4 scheme, but I think he could transition quickly into the 4-3 as a 3 technique. He's an interesting name if they want to add more depth. I know they just signed Carl Davis, so maybe they aren't looking to add there. But if they do, he's a nice option. That's a wide receivers, Golden State. If they want to go out, he can help in different positions, outside, inside. He would make some sense if the price continues to drop and the market isn't what he thought it would be. So those are 3 names I'm keeping an eye on. But I really, guys, guys add maybe like Rodney, the tackle, who used to play for Arizona just last year, the folks on the defensive side of the football. I don't think you're going to see anything crazy the way. They seem to be really committed in the straight market and make all their assets available. Beckham things come true. Make a play on that. But if not, we can, sign some depth guys and attack path being less the players' positions.
All right, Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report. We appreciate the insight and the time.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake. We will check back in with Jake as free agency and the draft get closer. So we're going to step aside and take a quick timeout here on More Sports and Les Levine, Bud Shaw from WKYC.com joining us. Sokolowski's University Inn, one of Les Levine's favorite places.
Mine too.
There you go. The winner of the James Beard Foundation Award. They don't give many of those out. They won that a couple years ago. Cleveland's oldest and best family-owned restaurant, Sokolowski's University Inn, located in Tremont, established back in 1923. Bud Shaw also endorses it along.
Bud Shaw also established in 1923. That's what I thought you were. Thank you for not saying that.
We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll be back with more sports and Les Levine here on cleveland.com.
The concrete in your garage is uneven, cracked, pitted, and just plain ugly. Transform your garage into a welcoming entryway with Nature Stone flooring. Reduce tracked-in dirt, eliminate puddling and salt damage. Plus, Nature Stone corrects uneven concrete so you don't have to worry about tripping or slipping.
Get Nature Stone installed in your home by the end of March and get up to 50% off. Schedule your free in-home estimate easily online today.
It's not just a floor. Wow, it's Nature Stone.
It's the best of the best, Cleveland. All-star cars, hot rods, and motorcycles at the 2019 Summit Racing Equipment iX Piston-Powered Autorama. March 15th, 16th, and 17th at the iX Center. If a piston makes it go, it's in this all-star show, featuring motorcycles, antique trucks, insane hot rods in the Asylum, tractors, military vehicles, along with all-star themed car clubs on display. New this year is Fat Man's Invasion with Euro imports, sport compacts, lowriders, and more. PistonPowerShow.com for details. Kids 12 and under are free. Discount tickets on sale now at select Discount Drug Mart locations and Summit Racing Equipment in Talmadge.
This day in sports history, March 12th, 1985, Larry Bird scores a team record 60 for the Celtics in a game against the Atlanta Hawks. That's brought to you by Smiley One Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electric. Smiley One, presenting today in sports history.
I was living in Atlanta during that time, covering a lot of Hawks games. I don't remember that one in particular, but I remember the Celtics and Pistons torturing the Hawks when it got to the playoffs.
Yes, the Hawks were one of those teams that would always do really well and then could never.
You know, Fratello was the coach back then, and Doc Rivers was the point guard, and they had Kevin Willis, and they had some really good Dominique, obviously, but they had some really good talent, but they just
could never put it together.
They couldn't put it together in a postseason against those other teams.
Well, you know, AFC Central has been ruled by the Steelers and the Ravens.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed
for
that.
a while. Yeah, Browns fans might know that. You know, it's been an interesting beginning to free agency as both those teams suffering some pretty significant losses and key losses for the Steelers. I know Le'Veon Bell didn't play last year, but they still don't have him.
Yeah.
So Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Jesse James. Those are three really productive points and parts of that offense. And Ben Roethlisberger is not getting any younger.
No, there are a couple of things, though, that I would say about the Steelers as a way of saying I'm not ready to say they're not going to be contending for the division title because the Browns now have the best roster. One is that they've done a great job of finding wide receivers in the draft. Smith-Schuster is a really good player who I think can elevate his game a little bit. And James Conner showed that he can be a pretty productive running back in place of Le'Veon Bell. I think the team that really has taken a big hit is the Baltimore Ravens.
Funny you should mention that. Let's take a look at what they've lost in the first couple of. First of all, they lose Ozzie Newsome as the GM, and we'll see if DeCosta, the guy who worked under Ozzie, is ready to replace him. C.J. Mosley signed with the Jets, Eric Weddle with the Rams, Terrell Suggs with the Cardinals, and Zadarius Smith with the Pack. That's the beginning of a pretty good defense if you sign all those guys that the Ravens just lost. And, oh, by the way, they have a quarterback who really hasn't shown that he can throw the ball consistently.
Yeah, I mean, that offense is an offense that's going to be run-heavy, at least the way it's constructed right now. And you can only have a run-heavy offense in the NFL if you have a real good defense to keep games, in that range where you can still win them. I think that's going to be a real interesting thing to watch. I also say that Lamar Jackson was very impressive last year. Even though he doesn't throw the ball great, I think we can see where he could get better at that. He's not going to be Baker Mayfield accuracy-wise. No way. But he's a dynamic player.
The one thing I would say is, when you see him a second time, like the Chargers did in that playoff game, there were some things that they did that he just flat out didn't have the answer.
Yes,
to.
And we've only seen him running like this for a 1 year in the NFL. And we were all saying the same thing about Kaepernick and RG3 at the end of their first years, that they had revolutionized the game and that they were going to be these dynamic players. And they couldn't stand up to the beating.
Right. I mean, they're big, fast, and strong, and they want to hit the guy that's playing quarterback. So if you allow them to hit you, you're not going to last a whole lot.
I've heard
longer.
the explanation coming from Baltimore people that Lamar Jackson runs in a different way than a quarterback scrambling for his life runs. He's running with his head on a swivel and probably running into tackles. The guy who's just trying to escape pressure. Whereas a lot of the runs that Lamar Jackson has are designed runs. He can look to get down. He can look to get out of bounds. But you can't do that.
No.
Snap after snap after snap. No. You're still going to have to pay the piper at some point.
You got to remember the defensive linemen and linebackers run and are every bit as athletic as Lamar Jackson, and they weigh about 30, 40, 50 pounds more.
Well, I would say he's a really great athlete.
He is.
So maybe they're not quite, but they're going to catch him anyway. And you're right. The defenders in this league now are as athletic and fast as 95% of the guys playing running back and receiver and quarterback in this league.
And I'm by no means crowning the Browns the champions of the AFC North. It's just very interesting to see how the guys that have been consistent playoff. I mean, there hasn't been an off season where either one of these franchises in recent memory has gone through the dramatic shift. And with the Ravens, their GM's on the hot seat. I mean, he allowed some guys to go that he might have had to because of cap, but those are really good players that he allowed to leave.
Yeah, you could probably look at the Suggs one and say letting him go was more of a sentimental loss than a real big on-field loss at this point in his career, just because he's had so many years in the league. But certainly Mosley and Weddle are big losses for this team, and not only on the field but in the locker room in like Weddle's case. So it's going to be hard. And you know, we've sat here and talked about this division now for the last couple minutes, and neither one of us have mentioned the what's that? The other team?
The Hughes? The Cincinnati Hughes?
Maybe there's good reason for that. Yeah, they look like they're about ready to become the Browns of the division for the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, I just don't see how they're going to, unless they draft a quarterback who transforms them in similar way to what Mayfield meant to this group. It's hard to imagine that they're going to pick themselves up out of this and be competitive anytime soon.
And a new head coach who hasn't been a head coach, and there's Browns fans can.
Well, the Browns had one of those too, by the way.
Yeah, but at least he was with the organization,
he was.
and you know, it's a consistent voice in the ear of your quote unquote franchise quarterback. So there is that, but you are correct. I will give you that. Time for us to step aside, take a quick timeout. I want to tell you again about Northfield Park, your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch all the excitement of live harness racing Monday through Wednesday and Saturday evenings, 6 p.m. post time. Open early every day for simulcast action from top thoroughbred and harness tracks all around the world. Enjoy free handicapping contests all weekend long, including the popular Road to the Derby contest on Saturdays and the weekly Sunday contest featuring Gulfstream Park. Free admission and parking every day at Northfield Park. Bud Shaw from WKYC.com and I will be back right here on More Sports and Less Levine on cleveland.com. Stay with us.
When my dad started Nature Stone right here in Northeast Ohio, he created a solution for age-old concrete problems: unevenness, cracking, pitting, and more. Nature Stone solves all of these problems in garages, basements, and outdoor spaces. Nature Stone is beautiful, environmentally friendly, and always affordable. Nature Stone is backed by Russell's Promise, our true unconditional warranty.
Get Nature Stone installed in your home by the end of March and get up to 50% off. Schedule your free in-home estimate easily online today.
It's not just a floor. Wow, it's Nature Stone.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget, Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Want to remind you, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/More Sports Less Levine. New content posted each and every day, including our Facebook question, which we always like when you respond to. So let's shift gears a little bit, talk a little bit about the Indians.
Okay.
There are some people that are picking the Twins potentially to win the division. Again, their pitching, without question, is perhaps the best in baseball.
Would you say without question the Twins have a better lineup?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would.
It's still the American League where you have to hit the win in general.
Right.
I know the playoffs are sometimes different, but yeah, I could see as we get closer to opening day, there's going to be a lot more people thinking the Twins can hang with the Indians in this division.
Now, their pitching staff has more question marks than answers, being the Twins. But My concern with the Indians is they're relying on a number of guys who simply haven't done it at the major league level before. And if they figure it out, they could be really good.
Yeah.
If a couple of them figure it out, they could be okay. If none of them figure it out, it could be a long year.
Well, I mentioned this to you off the air, and I had heard an interview done with Buster Olney the other day of ESPN. And is he still with ESPN?
I think so.
Yeah, those guys move around a lot.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, he talked about how excited everybody in camp was about Tyler Naquin and how Bradley Zimmer might be back by May 1st, and that's sooner than some people expect. And he thought that Lindor would be in this opening day lineup. I don't think anybody's concerned about Lindor. I mean, he's played 158 games one year, 159 games. I mean, it's once he gets healthy again, it's not like you have to worry about him going in and out of the lineup. But I think the Zimmer thing in particular isn't quite as simple as he'll be back May 1st and everything will be okay, because, as you point out,
he's about a 230 hitter.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, he hit the ball really well, then went into a long extended slump. Now, he is a much better defensive center fielder than even I thought he was. I mean, he's really good, but it doesn't answer the question of who's going to hit the ball for him. And if Hanley Ramirez doesn't work out, Lindor and Ramirez and Jose Ramirez may not see a strike. We may put those two on first and second and say, go ahead, try to knock them in, boys.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, how many times has a guy who didn't play the previous season after May 31st join a team, and you hear the manager say, yeah, we kind of have him in the middle of the order in our mind. Well, that just tells you, where this lineup is right now. Not that Terry Francona doesn't see some possibilities of guys that could, Jake Bowers.
See,
Jake
Burns, yeah.
You did that.
He's a capologist.
Jake Bowers may step in. Obviously, Martin may have a better season. He was showing some things before his illness, but it's not. When opposing pitchers look at that lineup, they're going to be able to pick their spots.
Yeah, and Martin's he's a 250 hitter career, which in this lineup is one of the better ones. They're
I didn't think of it that way.
I mean, honestly, it is.
It's high praise.
When you look at the projections, I think there were 3, maybe 4 that they do those projections over a season that were hitting over 250. Ramirez and Lindor were 2 of them.
I think this is probably why you hear Francona say what a big part of this team he thinks a healthy and productive Kipnis could be.
Yeah.
And certainly with his contract, they're not moving that contract anytime soon. So
unless they have a crane.
The hope is that they really get some, the 75 to 80 RBI season.
I mean, he's capable. He's done it before. The problem
is
he hasn't done it in a couple of years.
Who are you going to bat leadoff, by the way? Who do you want up there?
The way it's currently constructed, I probably put Lindor and Ramirez 1 and 2 because I want them to get as many at-bats as possible. Yeah. I honestly, there isn't a cleanup hitter that you can see. There isn't somebody that I'm confident can get on base consistently where I could bat Lindor 2 and 3.
Yeah, they are certainly betting on guys on base percentage and then being a more athletic team that can use their speed to steal bases. I think, if I'm wrong, I might be wrong. Did they lead the league in stolen bases last year?
They were close.
They were somewhere close. So.
They may have led the American League, and they were close to the league.
And now they've gotten some base cloggers off. They certainly.
You got to spin it some way.
There you go.
Those base cloggers that hit 40 home runs and drive it out.
The parrot was clogging bases.
There's something about guys that clog bases and driving 100 runs that I've kind of become accustomed. I'm fond of those guys.
It is funny how you can position things any way you really want to, right? They're a lot faster.
We're going to step aside and take a quick time out. And actually, we're out of time, bud. We went right through that.
It's going to be a long time out.
Exactly. We're taking time out until tomorrow. So for Bud Shaw.
See how much fun we were having?
From WKYC.com, I'm Dave Bacon. We'll see you again tomorrow night right here. More sports and less Levine on cleveland.com. Have a great night, everybody. It's the beginning of NFL free agency. The league year starts at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everyone.